countdown on how to prepare your organization for the next cryptographic shift. We apologize for everyone. We're running a few minutes behind, but let's get started. Today's webinar is presented by the UAE Cybersecurity Council with the support of the Technology Innovation Institute and QuantumGate. We're honored to have with us this morning His Excellency Dr. Mohamed Al-Kuwaiti, along with industry leaders, experts, and technical specialists. My name is Ibrahim Sultan. I'm the Director of Growth and Go-to-Market at QuantumGate. QuantumGate, we specialize in a very niche area, which is your post-quantum cryptography, helping organizations prepare for the emerging threats that quantum computing will bring. We know that it's going to do a lot of positive things in the world, but at the same time, we're also cognizant of the fact that it's going to bring a lot of challenges to a lot of areas that we rely on a day-to-day basis. Today, we will be addressing one of the most pressing challenges in cybersecurity, the impact of quantum computing on today's cryptographic systems, NIST guidance, and steps organizations can take now to prepare for the post-quantum era. This session also sets the stage for CyberQ 2025 this November in Abu Dhabi. So don't forget to set some time aside to register and attend the event. For those in the space, for those of you that care about protecting your systems, your data, your people, this is going to be an invaluable event. I'm really pleased to see so many of you joining us this morning. Your presence here signals something very, very important, that leaders in this region are already thinking ahead, are already preparing for the changes that quantum technologies will bring and pose to entities, organizations, and businesses. Let me start with giving a very simple analogy. Cryptography is the invisible safety thread that binds our digital lives. So every time we send an email, make an online purchase, make a bank transfer, log into a secure system, share confidential data, we are relying on cryptography to keep us safe. Most of the time, if not all the time, we don't even think about it. We don't even know it's there. It just works. It works silently and invisibly. But the reality is that the foundation is about to be tested in a way that we've never experienced before, because quantum computing is advancing, and it's advancing rapidly. We've seen from all corners of the world, from your clandestine research labs, from China, to the secretive research labs from tech, your big tech companies like Google, IBM, Microsoft, and also from the labs of the UK, that it's coming, and it's coming very, very fast. Whilst there's still a debate on exactly when we'll reach what some call Q-Day, which is the moment quantum computers can break today's encryption, experts agree it's not a question of if, but when. And that timeline seems to be shrinking every single day. Recent advances, global momentum, and new standards from NIST make preparation extremely urgent. For every organization, government, business, or infrastructure that relies on cryptography, every single day, decisions taken now will determine resilience tomorrow and for the future. The choices they make now will determine whether they are ready when that moment comes, and whether they are left exposed to the risks that the quantum computings will pose. I'm glad to say, so far it sounds a lot, kind of all doom and gloom, but it's not. And I'm pleased to say the good news is that we're not starting from zero. Around the world, momentum is building. And here in the UAE, the Cybersecurity Council, is playing a leading role, providing guidance and resources to ensure readiness for businesses and entities across the region. But to be honest, for decision makers, this can feel very overwhelming. New acronyms, shifting timelines, technical details, it's a lot to be taken in. And that's why today's program is designed to focus on what leaders need to know and what steps organizations can take now. So a quick update on how the next hour and a half will unfold. We'll hear from His Excellency Dr. Al Kuwaiti, who will share the UAE's regulatory perspective and how national preparedness is taking shape. We'll hear from Yane Hervimes, who will give us a practical overview of what organizations should be doing today. We'll then be hearing from Dr. Essa, who will take us into the first steps of readiness, discovery and inventory, and what organizations should be doing as a first step. Professor Michael Scott will provide insights from global best practices on how to achieve crypto agility. We'll finish with two forward-looking sessions, one on post-quantum cryptography in practice with Dr. Mukul Kulkarni, and another on quantum cryptography itself with James Grieve. Finally, we'll close with some reflections and some questions from the audience with Dr. Emmanuel Bellini. So whether you're a policymaker, an executive making strategic decisions, or part of a technical team that will implement these changes, this webinar is for you and you're at the right place. I think I've said enough. So let's begin if everybody's ready. The first session, let's look at preparing for the quantum threat and what every organization should know today. Let's zoom into and look at the global timeline and practical risks every organization should be aware of. For this, I'm pleased to introduce Yane Hervimes, Chief Technology Officer at QuantumGate. Yane will be discussing the uncertainty around the so-called Q-Day, what is realistic versus hype, and most importantly, what every organization can be doing now, from awareness campaigns to adopting crypto agility policies. Yane, welcome. Over to you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the opening and the introduction. Let me share my presentation.
Yeah, Yane, if I can maybe improvise for a second. I've given everybody a round of introductions, very, very high level. How about the panelists give your own introductions, just so that everyone is familiar, you know, who you all are and how you play into this webinar.
Okay, brilliant. Let me start. So my name is Janne Hirvimies, and I'm the CTO of the QuantumGate. Nice to be here this morning.
Thank you, Yane.
Hi, I'm Andre Esser. I'm the principal researcher of the cryptanalysis team at the Technology Innovation Institute, particularly in the Cryptography Research Center. Happy to be here today.
Thank you, Andre.
Hello, I'm Mike Scott. I'm a technical director at TII and a career cryptographer.
Thank you, Michael. James, you want to go next? Or Mukul?
Hi. So my name is James Grieve. I'm a senior director for quantum communications in the Quantum Research Center at TII.
Thank you, James.
Hi, good morning. I'm Mukul Kulkarni. I am director of post-quantum cryptography at TII, and I work on design of post-quantum algorithms.
Thank you, Mukul.
Morning, everyone. This is Emanuele Bellini, Technical Director at the Cryptography Research Center of TII. Nice to meet you all and welcome to the webinar.
Thank you, Emanuele. Julia?
Hello, everyone. I'm Julia Miocchi. I'm Senior Project Manager at the Cryptographic Research Center, and I welcome you all at this the Quantum Countdown webinar.
Thank you, Julia. Just before I hand over to Yane, Yane, don't worry, floor will be yours very soon. A note to all of our guests on the call. I'm sure a lot of you have come to this session with a lot of questions. We will be fielding some live questions at the end, but also please feel free to drop your questions in the chat. We will be looking through these throughout the webinar, and we'll attempt our very best to be answering them in real time. So please drop all of your questions in the webinar chat. Yane, over to you. Floor's yours.
Thank you, Ibrahim. So yeah, I'll be addressing the very simple topic this morning, what every organization should know. No, I'm a little bit joking because this is extremely complex topic. I'm touching the surface, and thankfully I also have my other expert colleagues here to taking you a little bit deeper. Quite often the question what I'd be asked, like once we get into the discussion, what are the steps and what the organization should do is just a simple question: what should we be doing? That's a brilliant question, to which the answer typically is a little bit more complex and more longer. But if we start setting the context first, and Ibrahim mentioned the timeline. So yeah, it's true that we don't know exactly when the breakthrough is going to happen, but I've collected few main news during the past 9 to 12 months. So as we all seen, there's been lots of improvements and lots of advancements in the field of the quantum computing. The other interesting thing is that if I think about, I've been within the QuantumGate a little bit over 1 year. Also, how the timeline is shrinking. That year ago, we were all talking about the year 35. Now, IBM is been releasing information that they're gonna provide the first quantum computer, kind of for the public use 29. Whether that's gonna have 200 or how many 100 qubits, but still they are fairly determined to provide that. There's also the other tech giants. Microsoft is of course in this space. Google is in this space. And also if we also think about the typically how our technology is evolving, there is someone inventing something, someone else inventing something, and then we collect these, putting these bits into together. So it's happening, and I think it's happening quite fast. Now, why this is a problem? So it's a great opportunity for the humankind, but at the same time, it is a problem for us who are working in the space of the cybersecurity. The problem is that it won't break a little. Our current security solutions won't go little break; they become obsolete. So this is the problem statement that it's important to understand, and that's why we need to start basically shifting and planning the shift to what we call post-quantum cryptography. Now, I also personally need to say that this is quite confusing. I'm talking about the post-quantum in the era of pre-quantum. So what does it mean? I don't have a quantum computer and I'm already post-quantum. So in practice, it means that we need to change our security solutions such that are quantum resilient and quantum safe once we have these equipments available. We all who's been in this space, we understand that the transitioning, because this migration will touch multiple layers in our system, starting from the lowest level hardware solutions, in our data center, going through the operating systems, cryptographic solutions, to all the way to the applications and all of the endpoints that we are using. So no one wants to do it. It's not like it's one update and then I'm done. It's gonna take multiple steps, and it's gonna take years to conclude to the level it's required. The good news is that the technology suppliers are already being prepared. So we have the technology available. We also have the first initial standards available, like NIST, have been working since, I think, 2015, or already almost 10 years of work has been done. And then, of course, last but not least, we also have a great capabilities here in the country under the TII Cryptographic Research Center. Okay, this is just very, very high level what we are talking about. I mentioned that this is a bit confusing. Why are we talking about the post-quantum when we are living in the pre-quantum era? So again, high level simplified. So the problem is that when the quantum device is available, the current very widely used and adapted cryptographic solutions will actually go obsolete because the mathematics beyond these solutions don't work, or it works in a way that quantum, what basically classical computer takes years, tens of years, hundreds of years, you know, the quantum device can basically resolve this problem in maybe in few hours, maximum in few days. Now we need to move into the larger key size, change the mathematics, larger key size. So basically we need to reintroduce the complexity behind these solutions, so that that are quantum resilient and quantum computers can't break. And the main thing what we need to understand is that we need to start planning this, because this is a big transition. We need to understand, first of all, what is our current state, and then start creating the plan based on our current state, planning the phased migration, and then making sure that, you know, we also have, you know, the security and the interoperability. The problem is also partially that, especially interoperability-wise, since we are changing the algorithms, the new and old algorithms are not interoperable together. So that's why we need to plan carefully the phasing. Okay, I already mentioned this threatens the classical cryptography, which is critical for basically, as Ibrahim was mentioning, everything and anything we do in our daily digital life. It's our digital identity. It's basically Emirates ID, the chip, what the chip is doing on the low level. Whenever you connect to your bank, whenever actually you send a message to your friend, whenever in enterprise environment you receive an email, everything, all of that and more is at stake, unfortunately. So then you can also start understanding the impact and the magnitude of this change. So we basically need to look everything, anything, and all of these layers. Here is a simplified, example of what it means. So basically, as mentioned, your online banking, which is most likely protected using RSA ECC based schemes, certificates, the protocols like TLS, SSL. Yeah, this is needs to be upgraded and replaced. Your password managers most likely, are also relying on the similar schemes. Your daily messaging, whether it's based on any of the mentioned apps, Signal, WhatsApp, iMessage, or some email-based schemes, these also needs to be replaced. Your cloud storage, or basically how we are sharing the data between our endpoints and the cloud storage. Your Bitcoins, I would start looking also, like what shall I be doing with my Bitcoins? And your digital signatures. This is actually important to understand that we are not only talking about the secret or the confidentiality of the data. We are also talking about the identity, digital identity. I mentioned the Emirates ID, for example, as one of the examples. So unfortunately, this also means that once we have the quantum computer available, I can actually impersonate to Mr. James or Mr. Mukul, and this will lead, of course, in the complete anarchy in a digital world if we don't do something about this. So there is actually multiple angles to how we need to prepare ourselves for the Q day. I don't want to sound like I'm telling about the doomsday, but in a way, it is a doomsday scenario unless we start taking the actions already today and tomorrow, and start planning and start deploying new solutions.
Solutions. Can I just interject? There's probably a good point just to interject with introducing His Excellency Dr. Al-Kuwaiti, who's just joined us. I know we are running a little bit behind, and His Excellency has a very tight schedule. So please, can I interrupt, if that's okay, and introduce His Excellency Dr. Al-Kuwaiti from the Cybersecurity Council, who will share how the UAE is preparing for the transition to post.
Thank you very much for this. I really appreciate your time, and apologies for cutting the presentations off there, and apologies for coming late. Thank you, TII, for all of the efforts that you're doing, and I'm honored to be with you all here, although in a short time, but inshallah more and more will be, as we are, as a matter of fact, embarking so many things in the quantum era. So the National Cybersecurity Strategy, as well as with the creation
I think His Excellency is facing some connectivity.
Yeah, the connectivity is a bit rough here. Yeah. But yes, sorry, I'll make it quick, inshallah. So there is a decree that recently was issued by the leadership of creating the National Cryptology Center, which is under the Supreme Council of National Security. And this is where many of those, alhamdulillah, encryption as well as cryptology aspects will be regulated, will be inspected, will be tested with the partners from TII as well as other entities. So our goal is definitely to really, first of all, ensure the regulations are in place, and to ensure the implementations of many of those new encryptions, be it the national encryption, be it the post-quantum encryption, be it any of those, are as well in place. And we're working really heavily with so many entities. I hope, inshallah, you're coming to GITEX as well as CyberQ, which is those two conferences. There will be some announcement in this regard. Recently, there was an announcement of the national encryption policy, as a matter of fact, under the Cybersecurity Council as well, and continuing on those aspects. So the post-quantum, if I may focus on that specifically here, yes, there is a migration plan. Alhamdulillah, TII is working with us in doing so many of those migrations. Entities need to be start, as a matter of fact, doing their risk assessment, if it's as a smart or as a first step in that perspective. And that risk assessment, looking into all of their assets, cryptological assets, digital assets, application assets, software, public key infrastructures, key exchange, any of those things that actually needs to be upgraded into those
We've lost His Excellency again. No doubt he will be joining us.
I hope you're hearing me, as a matter of fact, in that aspect, although the connection is a bit left. Yes. So definitely there will be more and more, inshallah, workshops as well as seminars in this regard. But yes, the most important thing is the readiness of our assets, the readiness of, first of all, the culture that we are sending across so many things, of adapting that cryptological things, and the importance of cybersecurity and safety and security of the data is becoming really, really very important. There was in the presentation about blockchain, for example, about transactions, about financial sectors, or even national security sectors. All of them definitely need to move and need to ensure their readiness of those post-quantum aspects. Timeline, inshallah, starting in about 6 months or so, those type of testing, readiness, working with some specific entities. We will be one of those entities at the beginning, as well as other entities from a national security entities, and moving towards some of the critical, as we put them into categorizations, critical, depending on the data classifications and data usage across those entities. What we need now from all of those, alhamdulillah, partners, entities, and you will see them, as a matter of fact, like TII, in GITEX, as well as in CyberQ, as well as more international bodies, the importance of partnering, the importance of really working in educating many of those entities, working together and building that synergy, and ensuring as well with the international bodies or entities the readiness of those hardware or softwares and many of those aspects. Building that compliance that we already, as a matter of fact, have already generated with the partners, the checklist, in order for us to do those migrations, and continuing exploring and really deep diving on this. We don't know when is the time where everything will be posted, so it's very important to do many of those aspects. Sorry, the announcement happening here, but please, if there is any question, I can take briefly as well.
If there's any questions for His Excellency, please feel free to drop it in the chat. I have a question for you, Your Excellency, if you'll allow me. How do you see the collaboration between government entities and private organizations evolving as we approach that, quantum migration that you spoke about? How do you see that collaboration?
So definitely, it's on all of those pillars of governance, policies, procedures, guidelines, putting those in place, working together to actually enhance it. The first time is done, as a matter of fact, and we are in UAE to be the pioneer of doing that in that perspective. So that synergy, that partnership, that actually sharing information of back and forth of many of those things is very, very important. Second one is on the testing and the risk assessments, as we're already starting doing many of those testing and risk assessments, and working with many of those technological providers, as well as alhamdulillah TII in that perspective, ensuring that these technologies are adaptable to those aspects. So definitely that's what we continue on.
Very clear. Thank you very much. Any other questions from our guests or the panelists?
So I see there is a question in the Q&A section, which says, when is the UAE expecting to release update new regulations for the private sector to ensure post-quantum compliance?
So recently we received some great, alhamdulillah, policies. One of them is the National Cybersecurity Policy, and that were by the cabinet of the UAE, alhamdulillah. Now going deep into a specific of a post-quantum, internally, we did release that between some of those entities. Inshallah, soon we shall broadcast it to everybody as well, and to the private sector too.
Clear. Thank you. Any other questions?
So there is another one, if His Excellency has time. So somebody's asking how the CSC, the Cybersecurity Council, would tackle the budgeting aspects to ensure everyone is in compliance on post-quantum.
So definitely there are some subsidiaries that we're already making and doing in many of those aspects. And definitely, I'm sure some of the RFPs released and many of those things where actually focuses that those companies, those providers, those solutions should adhere and comply with many of the national securities. Well, this is where those companies, we can work with them and see if there is actually already an alignment on that. Definitely, this will help more and more on that. So budget-wise, we can take those in a case-by-case uses. However, entities, they need to ensure their compliance with many of those cybersecurity. Sorry again for that, but yes, ensure entities will collaborate with us in this regard and adhere to. I'm sure all of these will be the de facto of so many of those technologies coming, although it's still in the starting point there. So it will be a de facto of many of those technologies already on there. We met with a great technology provider, as a matter of fact, last week and the week before, and they are, alhamdulillah, looking into that quantum closely as well. Although with the geopolitical aspects or maybe the specifically the US administration changes and opening here and there, but definitely it's coming, those post-quantum.
Your Excellency, thank you very much on a couple of points. First of all, for joining this webinar and answering some of these questions, and for also offering your valuable insight. So thank you very much. Really appreciate your presence here.
Thank you very much, and hope to see you, inshallah, soon, everybody. Thank you.
Inshallah, inshallah. Yanne, I know I very rudely interrupted you through your presentation. Please, can I hand it back to you for you to finish your presentation and wrap up?
No worries. It was actually very pleasurable to listen His Excellence, and basically he was covering quite a few of my points. So I'm just repeating. Let me reshare my screen and we'll get back to that. Okay, good. So where were we? So the post-quantum migration, or the whole post-quantum is not a new topic. So basically, if we go back 30 years, when Peter Shor actually, 1994, came up with an algorithm where he proved that the RSA ECC are going to get broken or going to be obsolete, the mathematics behind these algorithms won't work when the quantum computer are available. Of course, first 20 years, this was a theoretical threat. And, we were expecting quantum devices to be, I don't know, 2050 or something, or somewhere in the future. But now this is actually getting really real. And the interesting thing is that, as His Excellence mentioned, UAE is definitely the trailblazing in terms of the regulation, but other nations are also picking this up. And again, when I started a year ago, I'm calling a global clock was pointing more to 2035, but now quite consistently, if we go around the globe, everyone has been pulling in the timelines more or less by 5 years. So within 1 year, we shrunk the timeline by 5 years. So whether we still have the 4 or 5 years ahead of us or not, time will tell, I don't know. But at least I'm seeing things accelerating. And now by 2029, by 2030, all of the major regions, major nations are expecting that their critical infrastructure is being upgraded and protected. Doesn't mean that still every bit and piece we still might have time, but at least all the critical sections, should be ready. Again, there's a fallacy of, okay, 2030 might still seem like it's a far away. But then again, it's not necessarily. If we start thinking about, first of all, I mentioned already that these migrations will take time, and everyone who's working when migrating some new technology into their data centers, they know that it takes time. The second thing I also told that unfortunately at times we're also breaking the interoperability. And this is also bad in terms of the migration. Now, the third consideration here is that we are trying to protect the critical data, let's say healthcare, bank, financial data, or IPR, IP in a large enterprise or even a smaller enterprise. So now the question is the shelf life of that data. So is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? Is it 15 years? Is it even more? So how long you think your data is valid? Now, if quantum computers are available within the next 5 to 10 years, there are already actors who are basically harvesting the data, collecting it, because this data is being shared, exchanged in the open interwebs. So you can do it if you have the capabilities. And then once the device or the computer is available, you can start opening the packages and seeing, okay, what was this? And if it's a government data, for sure, there's lots of critical data that we want to keep protected years to come. If it's a critical IP data, trade secrets, financial data, healthcare data, for sure, the time span is more than 10 years. So that's why basically, actually, we already maybe late in some areas. Okay, as mentioned, and as His Excellency mentioned as well, the UAE is clearly the forerunner in the global regulation. But I just collected some other regions and countries here. So as you can see, globally, it's happening. It's happening as we speak. The regions are being prepared, the nations are being prepared. Now, again, going back to the original topic of my presentation. So what you need to do today. So you need to start building the strategy for the post-quantum for your organization. The strategy means that you need to start building the awareness. You need to start training your people. So unfortunately, us all, we need to, after 25, 30 years of stable era in the terms of the cryptography, as Ibrahim mentioned, it's been working so well that it became invisible. So no need to worry. It's just there. It just works. I'm receiving an update. But now this is a more fundamental change. We need to learn new things, and that's why we, for example, having this webinar today. And then strategy, includes, of course, putting some timelines, budgets, start building some other plans. There's also lots of technical stuff that needs to happen. We need to start doing the inventory. We need to understand that what do we have today and how we are doing the transition. Thankfully, I have my colleagues presenting in the next presentations, more details how you can do this. But basically today, tomorrow is time to start planning, creating the strategy. You also might need to contact your suppliers. You might need to seek some expertise outside of your organization. But the only thing you don't have time is to wait. You need to start acting today. And good news is that there are people around who can help you, who can basically help you, your organization, create strategies, plans, inventories, train your people. It's available. Thank you.
Janne, thank you very much for kicking this off and grounding us in the realities of quantum threat. For our audience, if there are any specific questions that you have after the call, after this webinar, I just want you to know that there will be an email address that will drop in the chat at the very end, and you can direct those questions to each of the panelists. Thank you, Janne.
Thank you.
Now let's move to the very next session around migration strategy, which is essentially discovery and inventory. To explain why this is so critical, please welcome Dr. Andre Esser, who, as he introduced himself, is the principal researcher of asymmetric crypto analysis team within the Crypto Research Center at the Technology Innovation Institute. Bit of a mouthful, I'm sorry. Andre will explain why organizations cannot migrate to post-quantum cryptography until they know exactly what they're using today. He'll also cover discovery approaches and best practices. Andre, over to you.
Thank you very much, Ibrahim, for the introduction. And thank you, everyone, for being here today. My pleasure to speak on this important first step of the migration journey. So why is this the first step? As Ibrahim mentioned in the very beginning, cryptography, we're all using cryptography on a daily basis, but often we do so without even noticing if everything is deployed well. And in this migration journey, we of course cannot migrate what we don't know. So we have to identify where are we using cryptography to actually know how to migrate to a post-quantum secure version of it. And for this, we need to go through this inventory and discovery, what we are discussing right now. So this is also why this cryptography, discovery, and inventory phase is the first step of all major migration frameworks by all recommended procedures for this migration. Has it been issued by the National Institutes for the Standards and Technology in the US, the regulatory bodies in Germany, in the Netherlands, in many other big countries, including the UAE. And these frameworks then evolve in slightly different steps, but we can summarize it as we see here on the right, that we go through a gap and risk analysis where we identify the capabilities of the current systems, how to migrate them to post-quantum secure versions. Do we need to replace them, or can they be reconfigured? Which all goes into this migration plan and then leads to the final execution with maybe some compliance phases, subsequent compliance phases. So, and for all these phases, an inventory basically enables this process because we are able to identify risks of the migration. We are able to prioritize systems that handle the most critical data. And we are also able to spot dependencies, understand where might lie difficulties in the later migration execution. And maybe it's also important to mention that it's not only about finding where are we using cryptography, it's also about dissecting how we are using cryptography. So dissecting the profile of it from a technical perspective in terms of algorithms, key sizes, all the parameters that go into it, but also from a more context level, like what information is being handled, why are we using cryptography here? Is it just for is it necessary to authenticate the data for integrity, etc.? Like what are the security goals that are achieved by using the cryptography? And handling the cryptographic discovery well in the beginning can help mitigate or even or ease or completely mitigate certain challenges that one often faces during such a migration. Here we have some of these listed. For example, we might face hidden systems which are not easily identified because they are not centrally managed. We might face legacy systems which have been installed like years ago and they just work seamlessly, but there's not much documentation available. There are vendor black boxes, meaning that the vendors do not disclose what cryptography they're actually using, or there is distributed ownership, so we don't have like a central point of access for the necessary documentation, but need to aggregate these first. This sounds like these are all challenges for the inventory itself.
but we'll see that there are techniques and procedures to tackle these challenges during the initial inventory already. And for this, I would like to discuss the different procedural approaches that we can take for such an inventory. Namely, there's the manual assessment, there's the automated discovery, and there is a hybrid version. And we're now going to discuss what is this and what are the benefits and the respective shortcomings of those approaches. So for the manual assessment, one usually starts with interviewing the IT department, reviewing configuration files, accessing the available documentation for our infrastructure. And the benefit is that we get this deep context understanding, what we mentioned in the beginning, where we want to understand where we are dissecting the profile of the cryptography, why are we using cryptography, what security goals, how critical is the data. All this information we get due to the deep understanding. But of course, it's a time-consuming process as this information is mostly gathered in a manual fashion. Downside is also that we might not cover everything. As we said, imagine these legacy systems where there is not much documentation available, so we might miss some systems. So the pendant for the manual assessment is then the automated discovery. Here we want to use sophisticated tools for automizing this discovery process by using either network scanners, endpoint inventory agents, or even specifically tailored cryptography discovery tools, which are made for detecting these cryptographic objects, the usage of algorithms, its certificates, like low-level crypto objects in your infrastructure. Once deployed, the benefit of these systems or these tools is that they are fast, scalable, and repeatable. It basically works all with the press of a button. The problem with, if we're looking at the broader picture of the migration process itself, is that we do not get clearly actionable items. So we want to know what systems do we need to migrate to prevent these crypto objects using deprecated crypto appearing in the scans. But this is not what the tool is telling us. It will give us a list of low-level data objects that have been identified. And also here we might not detect all the assets. Think of isolated environments, smart card readers, radio frequency devices. All of those are difficult to not impossible to detect via these tools. So then we come to the hybrid approach, which basically tries to combine both of these approaches by, on the one hand, doing a manual assessment to understand what systems, appliances, and applications we're using. On the other hand, perform the automated discovery and then try to link both of these information, which systems are using which cryptographic objects are related to these applications. The benefit is definitely the most complete coverage with the best understanding of the usage of cryptography that we can get. On the other hand, of course, we have this additional effort for linking both worlds. This is the procedural distinctions we make for the discovery phases. There's also like a conceptually different approaches, which also somewhat relate to manual and automated discovery, which we're going to discuss on this slide. So we have, on the one hand, the system-centric approach, and on the other hand, a crypto-centric approach. For the system-centric approach, which you can somewhat classify into this manual assessment, you follow a top-down approach. So you start from the systems, the applications, the appliances that are present in the infrastructure that are being used to handle information, critical or less critical. And then you try to understand what cryptography is being used by these systems. Mostly in a manual assessment, but sometimes also enhanced by automated discovery. On the other hand, the crypto-centric approach goes more a bottom-up approach. So we start from the low-level objects and then try to understand what are systems and applications using those cryptographic objects. And there's even a standard for this by CycloneDX in cooperation with IBM, which is like a cryptography bill of material standard, like the software bill of material. And yeah, this is, of course, where automated discovery tools shine. So maybe at this point, let us leave a few words on cryptographic discovery tools. So what are these tailored tools to perform such an inventory? So a cryptographic discovery tool is some software or appliance which is installed in your own infrastructure. So either a device that is plugged into the network or some software that is installed on your systems. And it then scans the network, the file system, or the communication of certain applications for these low-level crypto objects, algorithms, protocols, calls to certain libraries, and detects those parameters then automatically. And there's a variety of products available on the market. Noteworthy that there is a UAE local product by the host of this webinar, QuantumGate. And here on the right, we see an exemplary output of the CDT. This is now actually the output of some, or the screenshot of some dashboards of the QuantumGate product, where we see that this tool detected some TLS traffic on the network, where it specifies in these dashboards what the cipher suits were detected, what kind of encryption algorithms for the symmetric part were used, what key exchange algorithms. So all this low-level data is presented then in these dashboards. So if we come now to the inventory and discovery, we now know what are there for procedures, what are there for conceptual differences. How would you actually tackle such an inventory phase? And here the clear suggestion is to also kind of combine both techniques. So we combine the system and crypto-centric approach. We go with a hybrid assessment, where we start from the systems in your infrastructure, the systems, applications, appliances. So this is somewhat a semi-manual assessment in which we gather all the information on what systems are there, what security goals do they achieve, what data are they handling, which gives us the system metadata list, which we then feed into the next process, where we want to identify the crypto these systems are actually capable of using and what they are actually using. So we have to make this distinction here, because we have on the one hand to understand what are the capabilities of the system to comply with respective regulations we have to comply with. And then we have to understand, is it actually configured to use this, if it is capable of complying, is it configured to use these complying algorithms? This results then in a crypto-enriched system data, which we can feed into the next process of a gap and risk analysis, where we can exactly do this exercise of understanding, are these systems capable of complying? If not, we have to find replacements. If yes, we might have to reconfigure, or we are already compliant. All of this then goes into a comprehensive PQC migration plan. Thank you very much. I'm happy to take questions now or in the end at the later Q&A session.
To our audience, please feel free to drop messages in the chat, and Andre will answer them directly. Thank you very much, Andre, for showing us why discovery is truly the first step in the PQC migration journey. To zoom out, what I'd like to do now is to look ahead at the bigger picture of building crypto agility guided by international standards. For that, we turn to Professor Michael Scott, Technical Director of Cryptography at the Technology Innovation Institute. Michael will highlight what crypto agility really means, why it matters, and how organizations can plan their roadmaps. Michael, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Ibrahim. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to be talking about cryptographic agility, what it is and why it matters. There's going to be change coming, and change is always easier to handle if you're agile, right? And that applies to cryptography as much as it applies to everything else. Now, cryptography as a science doesn't stand still. It's been developing over the years. It's constantly evolving. If you look back 30 years ago, we'd be using cryptographic primitives with names like 512-bit RSA for digital signature. DES, data encryption standard. We'd use that for bulk encryption of data. MD5, that was the name of the hash functions we used to ensure the integrity of data. They're all gone now. Over time, they were all broken, and over time, they were all gradually replaced. So today, fast forward 30 years, we don't use any of those old systems anymore. We use 256-bit elliptic curves. We use the advanced encryption standard for bulk encryption, and we use a much better hash function to ensure data integrity. Right, so the need for change has always been there, because cryptography is, people design cryptographic schemes, but a lot of other clever people are always trying to break them. Right, so we call this cryptanalysis, and constant cryptanalysis ultimately erodes confidence. And also computers get faster, which makes cryptanalysis easier. And of course, new ideas develop. Clever people come up with clever new ways of breaking old systems. Right, so the need for agility, the need for change has always been there. In the past, I guess we were lucky to get away with it to an extent, but basically we saw the need for change coming. It came at us relatively slowly, rather predictably. So we updated as we went along, and somehow the whole thing held together, right? And so we've come to depend on and trust our cryptography to do what it needs to do to support the modern world. So it came at us, if you like, in small manageable waves, and we managed to muddle through. Right, now, what do I mean by cryptographic agility? Well, we all understand the term agility. Nothing lasts forever, right? Everything needs to be changed ultimately. So in the ideal world, the vision would be that cryptographic resources could be implemented in such a way that with a simple flick of a switch, old methods could be taken out and new methods could be inserted. Right, this could ideally happen transparently and with little or no impact on users. Right, that would be the ultimate, if you like, in the kind of agility we'd like to achieve. However, in the real world, it's not going to be quite as easy as that. Cryptographic developers should have ensured that cryptographic primitives that are implemented can be easily replaced. In other words, just simply unplug the old one and plug in the new one. That would be the ideal situation, but sometimes the situation isn't as ideal as that. And of course, the main difficulty we're going to face is legacy issues. The cryptography we use at the moment has got deep roots that go down very deep, so we have to dig all that up ultimately, maybe, and replace some of it. Right, so for example, of the legacy issue, we have these things called digital certificates, which are used to authenticate entities on the internet. Some of those that were issued with 20-year lifetimes. So we're actually still dependent on some of those certificates. And of course, they use 20-year-old cryptography because that's when they were designed. Right, now they were designed very conservatively at the time, so they're still good, they're still okay. But you get my point that the roots of cryptography go back 20 years. Uprooting this, if that cryptography should suddenly be broken, digging all this stuff up and replacing it is going to be a fairly major undertaking. So what is this threat? It's what we call a cryptographically relevant quantum computer, or a CRQC. Now, if such a device were ever to happen, were to be developed, and it looks like it's going to be, then this would not represent a small wave for cryptography. This is a tsunami, right? The threat of such a device being invented is plausible, and it could happen quite suddenly, right? But we really have no idea of when. People will give you estimates between 5 years and 30 years. I'm not a physicist. I don't really know. If it was a betting man, I could put money on it, but I'm not going to do that here. The impact, nonetheless, if this device were to pop into existence on cryptography would be absolutely massive. Now, to an extent, we saw this coming. Peter Shor warned us back in the 1990s. This is like a meteorite heading towards planet Earth. We kind of saw it a long way out. For the first 10 years, we sort of ignored it because it was very far away and it wasn't much of a threat. But now it's gotten a lot closer. So about a decade ago, the cryptographic community kind of woke up to it as a threat, and they started getting ready for it. And they started designing new cryptographic primitives, which are immune to such a device, right? So that process has been taking place in a calm and measured way, with a lot of effort gone into it. And the cryptographic community has indeed come up with new methods of cryptography, which will withstand this device if it should come into existence. But the issue is the changeover. The issue is ripping out our old cryptography and putting in our new cryptography. So just to summarize all that, the situation's a bit like a three-legged stool, right? Cryptography, the internet, the World Wide Web, global e-commerce depends on cryptography. So it's built on top of this three-legged stool, right? This stool has the three legs as indicated. However, a quantum computer, once it appears or comes into existence, basically it kicks away one of the legs. And as we all know, kick away one leg of a three-legged stool, the stool collapses. The whole thing collapses, right? So it brings down the internet, the World Wide Web, global e-commerce, right? So this is serious, guys. If this happens, the impact is absolutely serious to the global, to humanity, basically. Right. So as I say, one of those legs gets kicked away and the whole thing comes tumbling down. So can humanity handle changes like this? Well, just very briefly, the Swedes did something sort of similar back in 1967 when they suddenly decided to change from driving on the left-hand side of the road to driving on the right-hand side of the road. Now, that's a massive logistical effort. They picked a date, they called it H-Day, and they decided that they were going to change overnight. Now, what we need to do, what we call it ours Q-Day, now we don't have to do it overnight, fortunately. We can do it in the run-up to it, and to an extent we can pick our Q-Day. So I think the Swedes have shown us that humanity is quite capable of doing something like this. So I think we can do that. Now, next I want to drill down a little deeper into the cryptography, because there are two main uses for cryptography that we need to be concerned about. There's, if you like, data encryption using public key cryptography, and this is typically secure encrypted communications, right? And the second thing that cryptography does for us is authentication. Very quick example, you want to buy something on Amazon.com, right? You want to give your credit card details to Amazon.com. You want to make sure that they're encrypted as they cross the open internet, right? So that's the example of secure encrypted communication. We need that. But we also need to make sure that we're sending our credit card details to Amazon and not to somebody else. So Amazon needs to authenticate itself to us so we know we're on the right website. So that's the two things that we need, if you like, in one setting. We need to be able to encrypt our data, and we need to know exactly who we're communicating with. Now, the secure encrypted communications suffers a particular problem, which Jan has already referred to: harvest now, decrypt later. Encrypted communication can be recorded, then an attacker can simply wait a few years or even 10 years and then decrypt it. And 10-year-old data can still be a problem if it's suddenly revealed openly. So this is something we need to defend against right now, because people are right now harvesting data, harvesting secure communications, maybe harvesting your credit card details, so that in a few years' time, if they can lay their hands on a quantum computer, suddenly all can be revealed to them, right? Now, the other issue, authentication, it's actually not an issue until this device, this CRQC quantum computer actually appears. So here we can afford to wait a little bit longer, right? So there's just a two-stage approach is appropriate. There's stuff we need to deal with right now, and there's stuff perhaps that can wait a little longer, right? So the public, secure encrypted communications is something we need to make sure we're okay with now because of harvest now, decrypt later. The authentication issue, which has deeper legacy issues associated with it, we can wait a little longer for that. Right, now, it's already happening, right? You'll be glad to know the community hasn't been standing still. So a good example is the TLS protocol. Now, you may not be aware of it, but every time you browse to a website, you execute this protocol, or rather your browser does. Basically, it authenticates the website to the user and encrypts the communication, exactly what we wanted in that Amazon example. So it's implemented in your browser, and most common browsers already have moved to supply support to save you, if you like, from the harvest now, decrypt later issue, because they support a hybrid method for the encrypted communication. This method uses a combination of a standard elliptic curve method and one of these new algorithms that we've come up with that's resistant to a quantum computer. Right, so this is an example where agility will actually be very easy, right? In this particular context, we just need to change a configuration setting, and our web servers and our browsers will start using this new hybrid method. An attacker has to break both of them in order to access your data, right? So even if a quantum computer should come along, you've encrypted your data using this new algorithm which is immune to it, so your data will remain secure. Now, that's already in place. All the major browsers already have this, right? So this has already been done. So for you as an organization, you just need to make sure that you've set the configuration switches on your web servers and you're good to go in the context of TLS. But that's just one context in which you use cryptography. Now, what about the authentication solution? Or do we know we're really talking to Amazon.com? Well, we have an algorithm for that as well. It's all ready to go, but we haven't rolled it out yet because, as I said earlier, authentication doesn't need to be addressed so urgently. So there's a couple of things you need to do as an organization. Andre's already taken through the first stage of it. We need to conduct an audit. We need to find out where we're using cryptography. You might be surprised how dependent on it you are. It acts under the hood, as Yanni's pointed out, and it supports your cybersecurity. So you need to figure out where is the cryptography in your systems. Right, then if you like, the next step would be to break down those into the two categories. Is it encryption or is it authentication? Right, so you need to maybe put it into those two silos. You need to deal with the encryption issue right now, right, because of harvest now, decrypt later. You need another issue. You need to determine where your cryptography is implemented. Is it implemented in software, firmware, hardware? Software and firmware will hopefully be updated. If it's your own in-house software, maybe your own in-house experts can get to work on it to upgrade to these new algorithms. Hardware, you might have to replace that, obviously, being hardware. But of course, if you're already cryptographically agile, this process will go a lot more smoothly, right? And that's an important point. Agility comes ahead of change, right? What you need to do to become agile, you just need to look at your existing systems. You don't need to change anything. You don't need to change the cryptography specifically, right? But you just need to make sure your cryptography is ready for change, right? So when this day should come, the change will be quite easy for you, right? So first of all, you become agile, right? Without disrupting anything or breaking anything. And then you're in a position, though, when change comes, you're ready to react to it. Now, who's going to help you with this? Well, the global effort has been led by the United States-based National Institute for Standards and Technology. They actually led the development of the new algorithms that we're going to be using. Right, it's a trusted organization which for years has fulfilled a global role in developing and maintaining cryptographic standards. And they have fortunately provided a detailed roadmap document to help us become agile, right? So I strongly recommend this document to you. It's available from the NIST website. And also it's written in the specific context of this CRQC that's coming down the line, right? So just a few highlights from that document. We need to be aware of our own internal policies. We need to beware of reliance on the wrong external providers. But of course, it's a good idea to work with external providers. If you have in-house capabilities and your own local cryptographic expertise, that'll certainly help you become agile. You need to work with, say, the right partners who can quickly adapt to standards and deliver timely updates. Because this is a situation which there could still be road bumps ahead that we haven't even foreseen, right? So agility, we don't exactly know what might happen. There could be new cryptographic breakthroughs. There could be new things that can happen, right? So, right. So legacy is going to be an issue. You need to maintain interoperability. This is a global effort. We need to all move together, if you like, if we're going to continue to be able to talk to each other. These new algorithms have different characteristics. We need to be aware of that. So my last words on the subject is get agile now. You don't have to delay on becoming agile, right? Get ready for Q Day. It is coming, right? Defend against harvest now, decrypt later attacks. Do that right now. Get started on that right now, because that's an issue that can be dealt with now, and there's important security aspects to it. Keep an eye on the latest cryptographic research. Cryptographers are still working away. They're still making things and breaking things. So you need to have a one eye on what's happening there. You need to, it's a good idea. This is a global effort. We need to work with international partners and adhere to international best practice. Right. So I'll take questions perhaps at the end of this seminar if you have any. For the moment, thank you for your attention.
Michael, thank you so very much in helping us see the roadmap to agility. Really appreciated. Now, let's dive into real technologies, starting with how post-quantum cryptography can secure today's infrastructure. I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Mukul Kulkarni, who is the director at the Cryptography Research Center of the Technology Innovation Institute. Mukul will walk us through how PQC is being deployed in areas like VPNs, secure applications, and mission-critical tools, and balancing innovation with minimal disruption for enterprises. Mukul, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Ibrahim, for that kind introduction. I again welcome everyone. So now that we have seen the need for the migration and like the first important steps in terms of discovery and agility, I will try to focus a little bit on solutions that are already available. So we have a way forward. It's not just that we know the problem and we identify the problem. We already have made some progress towards the migration, and I will try to touch base on this part. So as a cryptographic goals, we usually use the cryptography for mostly these goals. We use cryptography to hide sensitive information. We use it to ensure that our data has integrity. It has not been tampered or tweaked during communication or tampered in storage. And most importantly, we also use cryptography to establish trust when we talk to the entities. When we're talking to a service like Amazon or Google, we want to make sure it is Google, it is Amazon, and not someone just imposting like an imposter posing as them. And in terms of technological side, we kind of think of the data security in terms of data in transit. So this is like our communications, that data that actually travels beyond our machines, beyond our infrastructure, and data at rest that stays in our laptops, that stays on our server. The data in transit is usually handled, the encryption is added at different levels. It can be added at application level by encrypting the chats or messages in the application itself. It is also, the protections are added at the network level to ensure that we have this confidentiality or integrity guarantees. And similarly, for data at rest, it can be again encrypted on application level, or it can be handled in file system or operating system level, where you encrypt the whole hard disk, encrypt the whole drives, and so on. When it comes to the effects of the quantum threats, the data in transit or the communications part is kind of more severely affected than the data at rest part. So I will focus mostly on that for the rest of the presentation, but I'm happy to also answer if there are any questions on the data at rest part after the presentation. So there are two main components when it comes to securing our communications. As Professor Mike already explained, we have one part that is like key agreement, where we try to establish the keys that will be used to encrypt our communications, to encrypt our data. And we want to authenticate who we are talking to and make sure that we are talking to the right entities, or we know who we are interacting with. Unfortunately, both these algorithms that we use, like the algorithms that we use for both these purposes, are affected and can be broken by the quantum attacks once the large-scale quantum computers are available. And in terms of the urgency, the key agreement part is really urgent, because these keys will be used to actually encrypt the data. So the store now, decrypt later, or harvest now, decrypt later attacks are posing threat on this part. And we really want to make sure that we migrate to the more secure alternatives as soon as possible. The good news is this migration is relatively straightforward. We already have good options. We have it's been implemented in some places, and we don't even see the effects to large extent. So we are doing fairly well, I would say, on this side. On the other end, authentication is not as urgent, but it's also more complex. So we need to be aware of this and start migrating or at least planning for it soon. Because while we know there is no immediate threat unless the large enough quantum computers are built, we know that this will take time for us to actually make progress on this front. So keeping that in mind, I will talk briefly about some of the standards that are already available. So NIST has published standards for key agreement called MLChem. It's FIPS 203. So this is a post-quantum or quantum secure algorithm that can be used for key agreement. The CHEM stands for key encapsulation messages, key encapsulation mechanism, pardon me. And another standard, another algorithm called HQC-CHEM has also been selected for being a standard, and this standard is being drafted. So we already have algorithms that provide this level of security. And the performance profile, we talked about performance profiles of these new algorithms. MLChem is actually better in terms of performance. It's faster to compute, but nothing comes for free in life. So we also need to pay in terms of the sizes of the data that we communicate. The ciphertexts are bigger compared to the traditional counterparts. And here are some of the, so as I mentioned, there has already been some early adoption. Majority of the modern browsers support quantum safe algorithms in a hybrid mode. Mostly, I will talk about that also briefly. And here are some statistics I could pull from Cloudflare yesterday or last week. And you can see the adoption is rising. Currently, about 37 or 30% of the traffic was already using quantum secure algorithms. In UAE, similarly, globally, it's slightly higher. It's about 33%, but about 1/3 of the traffic on the internet observed by Cloudflare is already supported with this higher level of securities. And if you see, those of you who are more technically minded or curious, you can see something like this. I don't know if my mouse is something like this in your browsers. If you dig into the logs, for the key exchange algorithms, and this is an algorithm, this is a hybrid algorithm which uses the traditional part, that's X25519, and MLChem is the post-quantum standard. So this is, you can see these kind of data already, that's actually being used. One of the questions, I was looking at the Q&A window as well, and one of the questions was about, do we trust these new algorithms? How secure are they? Or are they going to be broken in future pretty soon? So this is true. This risk is there. While we believe that the standards, the post-quantum standards, have gone extensive scrutiny from the experts over the last few years. There is, in cryptography, it's always like a cat and mouse game. There is always a risk that someone coming up with a new attack and things been broken. I mean, essentially, this is what happened with the traditional security. It was good to go for a couple of decades, and now it's suddenly, we are at a point where we need to think about migrating to new algorithms. So to kind of thwart and protect against this kind of attack surface, the expert advice right now is to use it in a hybrid mode. So we use both traditional and post-quantum algorithms together, so that we have the security guarantees that at least one of, as long as both of them are not broken, we still have some security. On the flip side, these algorithms are a bit more complex to implement. They give larger ciphertexts, as I said, but we already see this in like our communications today, and this has the effect is not so perceivable. I will move quickly to the authentication part. In the case of authentication, as Professor Mike also mentioned, the case is a bit complex. We use the signatures or authentication mechanisms in many, many different contexts, and they have very different needs in terms of performance sizes. So it's difficult to find like one good solution that fits them all. So NIST kind of took this into cognizance, and they actually selected multiple algorithms already for digital signatures. So 2 of them have already been published as FIPS standards. Another one is in progress. And in fact, there are more algorithms that are currently under scrutiny, and we expect more standards to be coming for authentication over the next 2 to 3 years. Due to this context dependent and like multiple uses, this is a complex task also to migrate, because we need to evaluate which which algorithms are really usable or pertinent to our cases. At TII, we have come up with a benchmarking tool and a website that's PQSort at TII. This kind of gives an overview of different trade-offs over the authentication, like the signatures. So please have a look at it if you are interested in this. In terms of protocols that are used, now I'm moving from algorithm level to protocol level. So in terms of protocols that are used to secure our communications, the TLS, IPsec, WireGuard, these are some of the most common protocols that we see that use cryptography to secure our communications. TLS there have been active discussions to improve the security or how to embed the post-quantum secure algorithms into the TLS protocol. So this work is ongoing, and we expect some guidance from IETF or these kind of bodies to come up on this. IPsec, I see this is a screenshot from a Fortinet's documentation, and they already have integrated MLChem in some of their products. Similarly, QuantumGate has a VPN product which has improved the security of the WireGuard's protocol by using hybrid cryptography. So we already have these solutions in place. Similarly, all the major technology service providers like Microsoft, Google, they have been planning for these migrations, and there are plans to kind of move to the quantum secure alternatives in next 5 to 10 years. One of the mentions I want to just highlight here is Ericsson, which is not traditionally a tech company, but it comes from a telecommunications industry. Similarly, hardware providers like Thales are also doing this. So there is a very, very wide effort going on, and I just wanted to highlight this. And then I saw there were some questions in the chat about different sectors and what is the guidance for this. There was a question on aviation as well, I remember. So yes, these sectors are affected, and they definitely need to catch up. They definitely need to migrate to these higher security solutions, but the urgency depends from sector to sector. So far, there has been, people have been waiting to get guidance from governments and standard bodies on a generic level to secure our communications as a whole. But we definitely have a lot of work to do in terms of catching up in a sector-specific protocols or understanding solutions that are, because every sector also has different needs from these algorithms. So we have made good progress on the general stuff, but there's a lot more to do in a very specific areas, I would say. And finally, this is the rough timeline that has been proposed by different standardization bodies. So we are right now today in 2025. Over the next 6 months to 1 year, we should be looking to build the inventories, understand the landscape, and plan for the migration. And by 2030, we really want to ensure that at least our critical systems are quantum secure, and then we move into the tail and make most of our infrastructure secure by 2035, when the traditional algorithms will be deemed as obsolete by most of the standard bodies. So the takeaway is to proactively start thinking about this, build this knowledge, build this awareness, understand the role of the critical data and long-term value of the information, and then maintain crypto agility and start moving to this journey of PQC migration. Thank you very much, and I will take questions at the end.
Well, cool. Thank you very much for these very practical perspectives. Really, really useful. Now, let's explore the complementary side of the equation, quantum cryptography. For this, I'd like to welcome James Grieve, Senior Director in Quantum Communications at Technology Innovation Institute. James will be sharing insights into quantum key distribution, quantum random number generators, and how hybrid approaches can combine the strengths of PQC and quantum cryptography. James, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ibrahim. So good morning, everybody. Now we'll talk about something related, but a little different. So I'm here to discuss the quantum solution to these threats. So by way of a quick agenda, I'll start out talking about quantum key distribution. This is, this handles what we were just describing, the key agreement protocols that are so urgent to migrate today. I'll talk a little bit about how these approaches are complementary to PQC. So this is not like an either or proposition. And then I'll switch tacks quite abruptly to talk about quantum random number generators. This is the other way in which quantum physics can help. And then I'll finish with a quick long-term vision about where we see this kind of stuff going. So when talking about quantum key distribution, which is sometimes incorrectly called quantum cryptography, we should first be very clear about what this is and what it is not. So this is a protocol, a family of protocols, which deal very specifically with the generation and distribution of secure key material. So the encryption itself, we anticipate, and which is, as we see in deployments today, this will be performed using conventional encryption, in conventional cryptography. For example, the AES system or OTP, one-time pad. So the encryption is not usually quantum itself, right? So that's what we have to start with, being very clear. And then I think it's important to try to differentiate, like the sort of what is the key differentiation between QKD and algorithmic key exchange? Why would you go to the trouble of deploying a quantum system here? And so to understand this differentiation, you have to look a little bit deeply at why algorithmic key exchange is secure. What is it that makes these systems secure? And so at their core, algorithmic key exchange is about finding some function or some mathematical problem, which is hard, right? So ideally you want some pair of problems that are, easy in one direction and hard in the other, right? This allows you to have, for example, a public key from which you can't just trivially produce the private key. And so this is important, This means you have to basically make reasonable assumptions about the compute capabilities of a hypothetical adversary. And this is true if you're talking about Diffie-Hellman key exchange, or if you're talking about one of the new PQC algorithms, like Kristall's-Kyber. So for example here, if you have reason to believe that computing a discrete logarithm is hard, then Diffie-Hellman key exchange is secure. And so the reason we're having this conversation today is that people have realized, Peter Shaw realized, that some of these computations that we believed were hard would not be hard if you had access to a quantum computer. And this causes us to revise our assumptions and invent new key exchange mechanisms, right? So quantum key distribution, this is the solution coming from the physics community, all right? Now what we prefer to do is make no assumptions at all about the available compute power of the adversary. Sometimes we'll hear people say that there are no assumptions at all placed on the adversary. It's not quite true. We assume that they are bound by the laws of quantum physics. So I'm not going to say that's a more reasonable or less reasonable assumption, just that it is an assumption, and it's a different assumption, right? So it's quite a different statement to say, I believe my adversary follows the same physics that I do, versus an assumption of what kind of computers they have access to. So that's quite an important point to get straight in. Right. And again, I say this again, I appreciate I just said this, but I'm going to say it yet again, just to be really clear. The key exchange part. So I have a diagram here showing you an encrypted channel. You start out with a plain text document, and on the right-hand side, you again recover a plain text document. During transmission, it is encrypted. We use a symmetric key approach here. So the same key is used to encrypt and decrypt, and the security of the system comes from the privacy of that key, right? So no one else should have a copy of that key. They should not be able to guess that key. Now that key exchange part, the way in which you arrive at a shared key, can be quantum. The encryption part should be classical, right? Now, symmetric encryption schemes such as AES are considered to be quantum safe. So the good news is we don't have to upgrade the entire thing to use QKD. We just have to introduce this out-of-band key exchange mechanism, right? How does it work? So this is how QKD is typically deployed today. This is how we imagine early implementations, at least for the near future, to look. So you'll have two sites, site 1, site 2, and they're connected maybe by optical fiber, maybe by some other optical channel, right? But probably within a metro environment or on the ground, you're going to be talking about fiber networks here. And these sites communicate using quantum signals, right? They transfer single photons, single particles. And this hardware layer then, it forms like a separate network layer just for key exchange. And then quantum-derived key material is provisioned onto some kind of network hardware. So for example, here you can see a number of different sort of common vendors for sort of secure encryptors, right? And so these guys implement, say, an IPsec or a VPN or something, and they can consume key material out of band using an API that's defined by the ETSI standards committee. So this is a sort of straightforward way to upgrade existing encrypted architecture to be quantum secure with QKD. Now, I want to drill a little bit on this statement. So we say, and I have said on every previous slide, that quantum key distribution is security based on the laws of quantum physics. But I'm aware that to a non-physicist, this may sound ridiculous. So we should ask, what does that mean, right? So why exactly is it secure? Why do we say it's secure because of quantum physics? Now, QKD, at least most variants of QKD, work on the basis of sending single photons, and the photon is a particle of light. If you remember, in quantum mechanics, everything is a particle. So we use single particles as information carriers. That's distinct from the communications that are probably relaying this video chat to you now, right? Where in classical conventional communications, we use pulses of light to carry information. From a quantum perspective, the pulse of light is billions, maybe zillions of particles of light encoding the same information. But for QKD, we reduce down to just one particle. And then we construct a scheme that's based on a couple of physical principles. First of all, the indivisibility of single photons. I can't take a photon and have half a photon here and half a photon there. It is a particle, right? So you can't split them, right? And formally the theory that this is resting on is quantization, something called the no-cloning theory. And also we rely on qubit encoding, a little bit technical here, but basically it's sufficient, I think, to say that you can encode more than one bit of information in one qubit, one single photon. However, you can only recover one bit of classical information from that photon. This is Halevo's theorem, right? So these are the two things that must be true for QKD to work, right? So we don't require all of quantum mechanics. We just require these two bits, right? So what that looks like is in a QKD system, you'll basically, the goal is to transmit a bunch of bits from site A to site B. And we do that by encoding them in single photons using what are called randomly chosen states, randomly chosen bases, technical detail, which I can go into offline if people would like to discuss more. Now, we send those over here in optical fiber, and we receive them at the other end. We measure the photons, right, one by one. And on the basis of our measurements, we create another bit string. And it should be the same bit string, right? We then compare what we generate, we compare some subset. And if there is any attempt, any attempt at all to interfere with one of these photons in flight, they will introduce errors into the sequence. And if the errors are below some threshold, we can post-process the key and come up with a solution where we have a symmetric key that we can use for encryption. And we can make statements based on physics about the privacy of that key. And if the errors are above some threshold, then we discard them and try again, right? So critically, it's not possible to exfiltrate information about these bits if you only have access to that fiber channel. Right? That's the important part here. Now, diving into how we see this being deployed, and I mentioned it was not an either-or proposition. I really can't stress this enough. Some of the rhetoric surrounding QKD and PQC of the last sort of 5 or 6 years appears to make this erroneous assumption that you have to use either QKD or PQC. But I really think we can't say strongly enough that no one is actually seriously advocating either of those positions, right? So the way these things should be deployed is obviously synergistically and together. And I take this image here from ID Quantique, which is one of the market leaders in early commercialization of QKD, and they show pretty clearly the vision. QKD being a physical architecture, being an out-of-band key distribution, naturally plays at this low layer of the network, physical layers, right? And then you can provision keys onto the low layers of the network, be that layer 2 or 3 or 2.5 or whatever they show here. You can inject QKD probably into one of these lower layers, right? And then PQC, of course, naturally fits in the application layer, and you can bring it down into lower layers as well, right? And so the point is you benefit from both here. It's a defense in depth strategy. That's the term that's used. Also, I have a couple of images here taken from our colleagues over in South Korea, where they've deployed QKD into some backbone networks, right? And you see here a similar concept. So you deploy QKD where you can, where it makes sense, securing, for example, the sort of core of your network between data centers. And then you also use PQC to connect these kind of end user devices, right? Where it's impractical to have an optical fiber leading all the way up to a QKD device sitting next to, say, your 5G smartphone or something, right? So this is kind of another way to do this complementary. And the final image I'm going to show here is taken from Adtran, now called ADVA. So this is a vendor of network hardware. And this is taken from a talk they gave at one of the ETSI conferences last year. And here we see there's actually a willingness and an appetite for actually incorporating this diversification of our security really inside the network devices as well. So what they propose here, and I think other vendors are also looking at this, is to incorporate QKD, you see that at the bottom layer here, with multiple different PQC key agreement algorithms, and here in red, a conventional classical key exchange algorithm. And you combine all of these to produce your session keys, right? So the goal here is that even within this device, you can have this kind of diversification of trust, right? And that would then create a very strong guarantee of security on this AES tunnel they've explored. Okay, again, I said switching tracks quickly. The other way in which quantum technology can be helpful here is in what we call quantum random number generators, right? So I say here, this is accessing the intrinsic randomness of the universe. And so I think it's important to state that if you want to do any kind of secure system, you need to have some private entropy, some private randomness at your sites, right? Otherwise, people would just guess your keys. So that's important. And so we say here the entropy is kind of the root of trust of all these systems. So all cryptographic systems require some kind of high quality entropy source. Now, there are requirements on the uniformity of the bits, right? This means that there should be no patterns in there. That's obvious because somebody shouldn't be able to guess your entropy. And also privacy, right? So in encryption in particular, it's important that these keys are, known only to authorized parties, right? Probably just 2 parties should have access to this. So important question of where do we get this entropy from, right? So I think this is maybe a physicist statement, but it's still true. Deterministic systems can't produce truly random outcomes, right? They can only produce what we would call like a observationally random outcome, right? So in this photograph here, I have a picture from Cloudflare. This is very famous. So Cloudflare deployed these sort of 80s lava lamps on a wall somewhere in one of their offices, and they have cameras pointing at this. And the idea is that these systems are somehow chaotic, right? It's very difficult to predict the next configuration of lumps of wax floating around in a heated liquid. Difficult, but not impossible, right? So this looks random, but actually the systems are deterministic. Now, the only description of the universe we have that has real, like ontic randomness in it, so a description of the universe that is fundamentally not deterministic, is quantum mechanics. And that means these quantum mechanical systems are a natural place to look for high quality entropy, particularly private entropy. Now, luckily, this is very easy to conceptualize, right? So I have a picture here. This is a beam splitter. So it's a piece of crystal that splits a beam of light into two, right? Here it's splitting mixed polarization into two orthogonal polarizations, but it's a beam of light, it's splitting into two. And I think this classical picture should be intuitive for everybody. The beam splits in half, right? In the quantum picture, the beam of light is actually made up of particles, single photons of light, right? And they're traveling through this thing. Maybe there are a lot traveling through very quickly. Maybe it's a very weak signal, so very few photons are passing through the system at once. But you see that in this picture, yes, the beam splits, but what that means at a quantum particle level is the photons are present, or let's say they're detected, in only one of these two paths, right? And so this is a kind of naturally obvious way in which you can say, look, if I label one of these paths 0 and the other path 1, I can produce a bit every time one of these particles is detected, right? And so indeed, this was the early QRNGs used exactly this physics, right? And those are commercially available now. So in terms of where we are with QRNGs right now, I really don't feel good about showing market reports like this. But here from Inside Quantum Technology, you can see that there is a robust market already today. So there are devices that are already for sale. You can buy these things. And I also include here a photograph of a device designed at TII here in the UAE. So there is even a QRNG available from my colleagues at Venture One. This is using COTS components, and there is a licensing model available for the circuit, right? I also want to briefly comment that in some use cases, you can use a sort of entropy as a service model, right? So for example, if you go and search the AWS marketplace, you'll find a number of people offering entropy as a service over the cloud. And for some applications, that's acceptable, tolerable, even a good idea, right? But for many security-focused applications, it's important to have a local randomness generation. And so for this is where this diverse marketplace of QRNG products exists and should be leveraged, right? Okay, so I'll wrap up here. I think I'm just about on time, maybe slightly over time. So this is our sort of long-term perspective on the use of QKD. I have also here a picture of a domestic QKD solution. This is an entanglement-based QKD scheme, also produced here at TII in the UAE and available through Venture One. So I see we have this ongoing migration. The story of this webinar so far has been about the challenges of migrating our existing infrastructure to quantum-safe solutions, right? And I think we can all agree this will be challenging and ultimately costly, right? Yet very necessary. So there are these new algorithms, the PQC algorithms. They're expected to provide security even against quantum-powered attacks in the future. But my position, and those of the position of people in my field, right, is that long-term security, we should try and move away from relying on a single algorithm or a single family of algorithms, right? So these QKD solutions, quantum solutions, even though they are obviously niche and limited in applicability today, they provide you the opportunity to diversify security, right? So in particular, we can consider building large-scale networks to sort of harden core infrastructure like backbones or point-to-point high-value links, and we can harden those from the bottom of the network upwards. This is a low-level network technology, and if we do this, we provide defense in depth and we diversify security and hopefully make things more resilient. And now, if you guys will permit me, I added this live during the talk. This is a slide from an image taken from Mike's slide. Somebody in the comments spotted that this graphic actually is wrong, right? There are 4 legs on this stool. And so I agree with Mike. If you kick over one of those legs, the thing would fall over if there were only 3 legs. But maybe there is a 4th leg, right? Maybe QKD can be this 4th leg. And in future, if somebody kicks over one of the other legs, we won't immediately fall over, right? So I'll leave you with that. Thank you very much.
James, thank you very much. Your slides took me back to the physics days in the school laboratory. Very insightful. Thank you. Now, I appreciate everyone that we are running a little bit behind today, but to wrap up today's discussions, I'm delighted to hand over to Dr. Emmanuel Bellini, Technical Director at the Technology Innovation Institute. Emmanuel will be recapping our key takeaways, open the floor to questions and provide resources for next steps. So please welcome Emmanuel Bellini.
Thanks, Ibrahim. Thank you all. Thanks to all our speakers today. We had Is Ines Al-Kuwaiti from the Cybersecurity Council, Anna Hirvimis from QuantumGate, and Andre Esser, Michael Scott, Mukul Kulkarni, and James Chris from TII. Thanks for bringing your expertise and perspective to this very important conversation. and topic. And thank you all in the audience. I saw you were very active on the Q&A. We really appreciate that. We really appreciate the engagement. We know your time is valuable, so we hope today we gave you a clearer picture of why we should prepare for the quantum era and why this is urgent, and what are the practical steps that your organization can start taking already now. So I'll briefly recap the key messages from today's sessions. In session 1, we learned that the UAE is not, session 1 and 2 were a bit intertwined. From His Highness, we had the Cybersecurity Council teaching us that the UAE is not standing still. He mentioned that there are regulations in place, strategies and policies that they already prepared and are preparing for different sectors. Then the initial section that was partially interrupted by His Highness was the one by Janne, where we saw why the migration is important and it matters now. He presented the exact timeline for the so-called Q day, the quantum day. This remains uncertain, but we know that the threat is real, and the risk of store now and decrypt later means action, that we have to act today to protect the data of tomorrow. In the session 3, the foundation of migration became clearer. Basically, you cannot change what you don't know. This is why discovery and inventory are the first critical steps that your organization should take to follow up PQC post-quantum strategy. We also explore crypto agility. We know that migration is not a one-time event. It is actually a continuous capability. Mike noted that we have assets that still have not migrated, even if they were declared legacy decades ago. So planning, governance, and vendor engagement is what will determine who adapts more successfully. Finally, in the last 2 sessions, Mukul and James looked at the future and what post-quantum cryptography is being, which kind of post-quantum cryptography is being standardized. And as we speak, being deployed over the internet, in VPNs, in secure applications, over the cloud, in telecommunications, everywhere. James also talked about other secure systems. In particular, we saw how quantum technologies like UKD and QRNG may complement PQC in high sensitivity context. So what ties all this together is a simple message, which is the quantum threat is real. And preparation cannot really wait. So we need to start discovery. We need to start embed crypto agility in our infrastructure. We need to start engaging with the national resources like the Cybersecurity Council. And doing these things will make a difference in being prepared or being left exposed if we don't do these things. So for those of you that are organization leaders, the next step is to begin internal conversations. Try to assign responsibility for cryptographic discovery, engage with your vendors, your trusted vendors, and reach out to Cybersecurity Council if you have any doubts, and follow up on the Cybersecurity Council initiatives. They're here to support. We are here also to support with tools, frameworks, and guidance. So now we might have few minutes to answer some of the questions. I see there was a pending question for James in particular. I don't know if you saw it. Maybe we can take it live at this point. So somebody was asking what is the difference between the TII quantum key distribution and the ID quantic solution. Maybe you can expand a bit on this.
Sure, I'm happy to answer that live. I just typed a partial response into the chat, but it's a long answer, so I apologize. Yeah, sure. It's interesting to compare the solution we have here with solutions that are on the market today. So I would say, first of all, that the ID quantique solution is fantastic. It's based on an older technology, like an early QKD scheme. It's the concept of operations is called prepare and measure. So you prepare a qubit on one side, you send it to the other side, and you measure it, literally like my diagram showed in my slides. And However, what we chose to do at TII was to work to industrialize a newer technology, which is called entanglement-based QKD. And so in our solution, we use quantum entanglement. We pair a pair of entangled particles and route them to receivers that then generate keys. So maybe this is a bit of a technical detail, but what it allows us to do is produce a solution in which the number of engineering side channels is greatly reduced. So it's more straightforward to create an environment where you can sort of inspect and certify trust in the user devices. Also, all the user devices are the same, which means if you're trying to build something more complicated than just a point-to-point network, you want to build like a star network with, say, 5 to 10 nodes, then we can have a kind of shared infrastructure model. The entangled source can be shared between many nodes. And actually, we built and deployed a test network of this at ADGM in Abu Dhabi. So there's a press release from a few weeks ago if people would like to check that out. And that's a 3-node QKD sort of sandpit environment for the finance sector in particular. But yeah, so our solution is entanglement based. There was a follow-on question asking about the range achievable. So our solution is limited at the moment to 40 kilometers of range. That's the MVP commercial version that's available through Venture One. In the lab, we have a solution that can do about 70 kilometers of range. It's a trivial upgrade, uses a different telecommunications band, right? So that should be available by the end of this year, I think. And then looking ahead on our roadmap, we should have long-range solutions that can target this 150 plus kilometers. That should be available sometime towards the end of next year, I think. And we're working on cost-optimized last-mile solutions that are even more range-limited, but come with a significant reduction in the hardware cost, right? So I think I would say that the TII solution is a sort of portfolio of different solutions. We don't see it as a one-size-fits-all, right? Like in a complex real-world network, there'll be many different niches. And we believe that having a portfolio of different solutions, sharing a similar technology base, can be the optimal solution, let's say, to addressing like a range of environments, right? And that I think is a different strategy to that taken by ID Quantique, where they've really gone all in on perfecting a single solution, which is, I would say, optimized for these kind of point-to-point environments.
Thanks, James. So there are a few couple of comments still on the same topic. Maybe you can take this as an offline to answer those remaining comments. Meantime, I see there is one raised hand from Yahya. Yeah, feel free to ask any live question. Maybe it was a mistake. So the audience have an option to talk live, right, in the seminar, or they have to write the questions. I know him. Okay, he clarified that he misclicked. Okay, no raised hand then. Any other question? Let me see. So yeah, the quantum topic seems to be the hottest one in this final part of the webinar. There is somebody asking
would private. This one about QRNGs?
Yeah. Well, I was going to read it. You can read it aloud for everyone.
Yeah, I was about to type a response, but I can answer quickly. So I think private entropy generation, right? The question is, would private entropy or QRNGs theoretically be untargetable for adversaries, right? So I think this is the goal, right? The idea is that you have some kind of secure physical envelope around your system. And if your QRNG is inside that envelope, then in principle, it's not accessible to an adversary, right? And that means that the entropy generation itself is safe, right? Private. That's loosely true, let's say. It's certainly true by comparison to the alternative, which is that you access your entropy via like a cloud service, right? So if you imagine accessing entropy over a cloud channel of some sort, then that cloud channel itself needs to be protected, needs to be encrypted. And then you're sort of in a circular argument, right? Like, how did you encrypt? How did you protect that channel? So I think for a lot of security applications, it makes a ton of sense to place your entropy generation inside the platform that's going to be doing the encryption. Really, it's from my point of view, it's the only sensible approach, I think. But of course, that comes with the overhead that you need to have specialized hardware to generate this entropy, or you have to adopt a different entropy generation model where you collect entropy from your environment somehow and hope that that's not being tampered with. The good news is that over the past, I'd say, 15 years or so, QRNGs have gone from being these exotic, slightly fragile systems to being totally robust, right? So there's now a marketplace, I think, of at least 4 or 5 very mature vendors that you can buy solutions from. They're not particularly expensive anymore. They are able to operate in a variety of environments. At TII, we tried to find a way to contribute to this commercial environment, right? So the QRNG we built is optimized for low cost and ease of integration, right? So we really feel that it's important that all security devices have access to high quality private entropy. And so the goal here was to make something that was as low friction to integrate as possible. And that's available today from my colleagues in Venture One. But like I said, also there are a number of other implementations on the market, and there's nothing wrong with these ones. So thank you.
Thanks again, James. Let me see. There is another question just popped out. What is your forecast impact on organization when quantum computing migrates with AI by adversaries?
I can try and answer this one as well if you like, as the resident quantum guy here, right?
Yeah.
So sure. So this is this comment about AI and how AI may or may not be complementary with quantum computing. You know, so I think it's a fascinating topic, and there's a lot of very speculative material online which you can find if you try and search for quantum and quantum AI and so on. Right. I would say that the fields of quantum computing and the fields of like large scale AI are quite distinct. Right. So that's not to say we shouldn't worry about the possible overlap between the two. I think what we're concerned about with quantum computing is, as Mike said very early on in this webinar, right? This really is a sort of a tsunami, that was his term, I think, right? So if we have wide scale access to quantum computers, then the sort of legacy systems we use to encrypt ourselves today simply aren't encrypted anymore. That's just completely open to anyone who has access to a large scale quantum computer. Now, with AI, of course, you're looking at a sort of different approach. AI is about sort of crunching very large amounts of data and looking for basically pulling trends and pulling value out of data en masse, right? So the way I see AI, there's 2 points here. One is that, of course, AI can assist with what we know to be hacking today, right? Looking for vulnerabilities, cracks in the armor, ways into a system, right? AI will absolutely supercharge that, right? I think that's been covered extensively already. But the other thing that I want to put out there, just as food for thought, in case we needed some more of this, right, is that, you know, I mentioned in my slides that if discrete logarithm is easy to compute, then Diffie-Hellman is broken, of course, right? And if factoring is easy to compute, like factoring large numbers, if that becomes computationally scalable, right, then you know RSA is broken. And these are the two mathematically hard problems that underpin something like 80% of our web traffic, I think, right? So I would just put out there that there's no proof, right? There's no formal mathematical proof that either of those problems are actually intractable, that they're actually hard. We have lots of evidence that those are hard problems because no one's managed to come up with an efficient algorithm yet. But that doesn't mean it's not possible to efficiently solve these problems using classical hardware. I'm not maybe saying like a laptop, but you know, using a sort of large data center, maybe you could compute these things efficiently, right? You would just need the right algorithm. And one of the things that I worry about is large-scale AI algorithms and AI agents, let's say, could be deployed to attack this problem, right? So can AI be used to propose efficient classical factoring algorithms or efficient classical discrete logarithm algorithms? I think the answer is obviously yes, they can be. Will they be successful? I also don't have a crystal ball here, but I would say that's your black swan event that could come much sooner than quantum computers, right? So in many ways, I would say a large-scale quantum computer running Shor's algorithm, this is the absolute best case scenario. That's the best case timeline for crypto systems like RSA, like Diffie-Hellman, right? But there's plenty of space, right, for one of these like totally unexpected black swan events. Someone just publishes tomorrow a classical algorithm for factoring, which is tractable on maybe large scale classical hardware, but still classical hardware. And then I don't know how the community would respond to that, right? And I hope we don't have to. But just food for thought, right? That maybe should give some more urgency to this migration.
Yeah, maybe to add just a small point on this topic. I will take advantage of this to advertise the CyberQ conference, which will happen on the 26th, 27th of November in this year, where we will talk about quantum, cybersecurity, and AI. What are the threats that they pose? What are the way they are interconnected, and many, many more things. So if you're interested on these topics, I really strongly invite you to participate to the conference. That said, I don't see any more questions in the Q&A left undone. So I think we can wrap it up. So the titles of today's event was the Quantum Countdown. So this is exactly what it is. The countdown has already begun, and the sooner we act, the more secure our digital infrastructure will be here in the UAE, but anywhere in the world. So we hope you live with a clearer sense of why the quantum migration and preparation is urgent, and what practical steps you can take now. And on behalf of all of us, TII, the Cybersecurity Council, QuantumGate, thank you all. Thank you all again for your attention and participation, for your engagement. Let's stay connected, continue the dialogue, and make sure we're all ready for the next cryptographic shift. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks all.